So there was a Simpsons short that played in front of this movie. I never thought I'd see the day, by the way, but it was good. I hadn't seen The Simpsons in years, outside of like an episode or two here and there. So that being said, this is technically the best thing I've seen from The Simpsons since the movie. I guess that's not saying much though. Onward takes place in a world where magic once existed but slowly faded away, leading to a world where there are still elves, orcs, and all other sorts of creatures, but now in a suburban setting. When two teenage elf brothers, voiced by Tom Holland and Chris Pratt, discover a spell to revive their deceased father for a day, they accidentally only revive his legs. And now they all go on an adventure so they can revive the rest of him before the spell ends. This was the first of my most anticipated movies of the year to be released. This was made by Pixar, and while I admit the trailers didn't wow me the way that most other Pixar movies did, my expectations were still high. And that's because the last few of their movies have been really on point. This is written and directed by Dan Scanlon, and this is his second film with Pixar, the first of which being Monsters University, which was good. As of this video, I haven't seen it more than once, but it was fine. This time around, this is an original movie with him at the helm, although I don't even know if I can call that an advantage anymore. If this was 4 or 5 years ago, I would have definitely said that Pixar is always at its best when it's something really original, but looking back, several movies have proved that that's not always the case. But either way, I was looking forward to this, and after having seen it, yeah, I felt more or less the same way about this as I did Monsters University. So let's discuss. Like most of Pixar's movies, this goes in with a strong theme and maintains it throughout the entire movie, this case being family. Tom Holland's Ian never got to meet his father, while Chris Pratt's Barley only has so many memories of him as a child. So this is their way of being able to have a strong father figure for one day in their lives that they can actually remember. And that whole idea of family is revisited throughout the movie. This mainly explores not just a father and son relationship, but the relationship between these two brothers. They're these two polar opposites, but they care about each other immensely, and they always look for ways to help one another grow. Even the boy's mother, voiced by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, gets her own subplot as she goes chasing after them once they leave home, along with Octavia Spencer as this creature known as the Manticore, and I thought this was a really fun subplot. There was almost the feel of a buddy movie in some ways, when they would go to track the boys down, but would have their own differing approach to how they do things. These are all really likable characters, and between the voice acting and the writing, there's enough here to get you on their side almost right from the start. Tom Holland is solid as always. Here, he kind of reminds me of a more awkward Peter Parker, less confident and less pop culture references, but he still remains very driven despite whatever challenges are put in front of him. Chris Pratt was by far the stronger of the two for me though. He brings a lot of energy to this role as well as the movie in general. He plays this Dungeons and Dragons style board game and he is really into the game. He'll jokingly talk in the style of medieval royalty while blasting heavy metal music in his van with one of the characters from the game painted on the side. That got some of the best laughs for me. If anything, he really reminded me of an animated Andy Dwyer, his character from Parks and Recreation. Octavia Spencer is the other big standout for me as the Manticore, this really fierce creature who has since become a restaurant owner that caters to families. And she freaks out about these things like paying her bills, even though she can easily overpower everyone in the room just like that. It's just this really strong creature having this midlife crisis moment, and it's hilarious, especially since Octavia Spencer gives 110% in every role she's in. I actually really like the idea in general of putting these mystical creatures in a suburban setting. The concept in and of itself is just hilarious because you have these powerful creatures who worry about the most mundane things, like you have a family of orcs worrying about a karaoke machine breaking down. In a way, this kind of reminded me of that Netflix movie Bright, which did something similar, but in the style of a gritty cop drama. But if you took the cop drama part out and replaced it with the feel of Zootopia, that's what this movie is essentially. And placing us in this fun world to explore gives us some great jokes as well as a lot of unique characters to explore. Above all else, the originality was really commendable. While there's a heavy emphasis on family here, I think it would have hit even harder had they reworked the dad's role in some way. The problem is, the father passed away before the events of the movie begin, and all we get for the first 20 minutes or so are other characters telling Tom Holland and Chris Pratt how great of a guy their father was. So that's all we have to go off of to drive us emotionally as far as him coming back for a day. I think if we had a few flashbacks or something to show how nice of a guy he was, this would have been a lot more effective. There's a very brief scene where Tom Holland listens to one of his dad's old voicemails, and it's honestly one of the most emotional scenes in the entire movie, and I wish they used this narrative strategy more. And when the boys are traveling to redo the spell, they're traveling with their dad's legs, and it's kind of hard to connect with a pair of legs. When the legs first appear, it's a nice moment because you see the boys grasping that it's part of their father, and it's really emotional. But after that, they're kind of just used for gags that don't really work, or whenever it's convenient for the plot. Like, they're really just this object for Tom Holland and Chris Pratt to move around wherever they need them to be. I'd also say this movie plays it safe in some regards. There are things about it that feel predictable or get wrapped up way too quickly. Like, the brothers are total opposites, and while they care about one another, there are some unsaid feelings, particularly from Tom Holland, and the movie makes it pretty obvious that it's eventually going to come to a head. And when we finally get that moment, it feels more obligatory rather than emotional. Plus, there's also this subplot about a curse that's brought up halfway through the movie, and is really only touched upon a few times before really coming into play. And it's made to be a big deal. But because the movie wasn't focused on it so much, you don't really feel the weight of the situation when it comes into play, because we were focusing on other things, like Tom Holland and Chris Pratt reconnecting with their father. I'd also say the animation was disappointing as well. Pixar's animation has evolved over the years, and this was fine. It's certainly an improvement over when the company first started. It's just that everything feels like a stock background in a way. You have settings like grand mountainsides and massive cities, and nothing really stood out. A lot of the focus was just on the main characters in each scene, and that was it. I guess in a way that's kind of the point. I mean, suburbia isn't always the most exciting setting, but this isn't the first time where a Pixar movie took place in a city or suburban backdrop. And I feel like I can picture the cities from Monsters, Inc. and The Incredibles, for example, clearer than anything here. At times, this just felt like a generic cartoon in some regards. This was good. It wasn't amazing, but it's another solid entry into Pixar's catalog. It has some nice themes of family that'll be really valuable, especially for younger audiences. And while it doesn't hone in on parts of that theme as well as it should have, there's still plenty here to enjoy. It's got a great voice cast, likable characters, and a strong sense of fun. Overall, I'd recommend this. Onward gets a 7 out of 10. It's by far not one of Pixar's best. I'd probably put it in the lower tier of their movies. It's definitely better than The Good Dinosaur and Cars. But what's nice is even weaker Pixar movies are still better than most other movies out there, so this is still definitely worth watching. But let me know, did you see Onward, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Was it one of your favorite Pixar movies or one of your least favorite? And what's one of your favorite fantasy-themed movies? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.